Stop creating the podcast the wrong way in 2025. Instead, follow these 5 practices to take your podcast next level on YouTube. If you have clicked on this video, either you already have a podcast and it's not growing, or you are thinking to start a new podcast. Everyone is doing podcasts today to build a personal brand and build a deeper connection with their audience. Billionaires, politicians, comedians, and YouTubers, they all are doing podcasts and it's working well for them. Hence you start your podcast as well. But starting a podcast seems very easy, but growing it to a next level is way too hard. So today I'm gonna tell you how to grow your podcast to the next level by implementing these 5 practices in your podcast. Before we jump into what you should do, let's see what you are doing wrong at the moment. Right now, everyone thinks that getting a famous person on your podcast, famous guest on your podcast, helps you grow your podcast. But that's partially true. If Mr. Beast is coming to my podcast, it will get good amount of views for sure, but I'm not going to get the right audience for my podcast because audience of Mr. Beast is way too different from the audience of mine. So getting Mr. Beast on my podcast is of no use for me at least. And if you are calling only famous guests on your podcast, it's their branding getting improved, not yours. So remember that in your mind. The second problem I see very often is that every other podcast looks same. It means they are copying each other only and they are not adding anything valuable that audience find value in and they watch it till the end. So think before copying, think why someone will choose your podcast when a good quality podcast is already available to your competitor. So do not just copy, steal some of the things from many podcasters or many other channels and incorporate into your channel so that it looks unique and it also looks valuable to your audience. The third problem I see is mainly there is no direction while creating your podcast. What usually happens is the host and the guest start talking to each other and they just go with the flow and they just put that same conversation on YouTube. But why people would find it valuable? Because you guys have just talked randomly on some topics. So this is what makes your podcast different from the podcasts that have been big like Dash Shamani, Dostcast and Ranveer, etc. The fourth problem I see is asking random questions. Since you do not have a direction where your podcast is going, you keep asking random questions. If you are asking about you are asking so many questions about a person's story of a person, how people will find it interesting until that person is a celebrity. Not doing enough research on a podcast and asking random question is another very big problem in India. And last but not the least is wrong packaging. You do not think enough before creating your thumbnails and titles. What happens is you just see what sort of thumbnail Rashaman is creating, what sort of thumbnail Ranveer is creating, and you start doing the same and implementing same thing on your title and thumbnail. And that's not going to work because it's a copy and paste. It's not a copy with taste. So let's talk about second point. Does it worth creating podcast today? Because it takes so much effort and time and money to put into creating a podcast, because creating a podcast is so much hassle. You have to find the right guests, you have to get a good location or a studio, then you have to do the pre-production, basically the shoot the video, then you have to get it edited, then you have to create the packaging, title and thumbnail. Then there is a manager who manages all these things and upload it on YouTube and see the performance and all these things. So it becomes very expensive to create a podcast. It can cost you a lot. So does it make sense? And the answer is yes and no. If you are doing it strategically, the answer is yes. And if you are just creating podcast randomly, it will land you nowhere. So stop doing that. We are on the third segment and it's the final one where I'm gonna tell you how to improve your podcast. You have to decide your direction even before finding your guest. For example, if I want to create a podcast where I want to share how one of my clients creates a huge amount of money with a low amount of subscribers, and when I'm calling that person and we are just talking about views and we are talking about their personal story, we are talking about their investment, there is no sense between the direction and the topic we are talking about. So you should not do that. Direction is basically like an idea. If it's not good, why someone will watch it? Second thing you need to keep in mind, see if you can package that great direction or great idea into a good thumbnail and title that your audience can't resist to clicking and watching it. So if I'm talking about how my client made big money with low amount of subscriber, that's a catchy topic and I can package it so well that my audience is going to watch that, because so many people have a lot of subscribers, they're not generating enough money, and if someone has even smaller audience, they exactly don't know how to do that. So the topic becomes interesting and they are going to watch it. The third thing you need to keep in your mind is, does this direction lies your audience interest? So if I'm talking about how to make big money with small subscribers and my audience wants to see like just how to grow on YouTube, that doesn't align with each other. Or maybe my audience can be a little more different if they want just how to shoot videos. So they are more into gadgets and production, and I'm talking about creating money on YouTube. That not combine the two things. Before deciding to shoot your video, see if your idea aligns with your audience. If it doesn't, do not shoot it. Fourth thing is, instead of just hooking your audience for the first minute, keep it valuable. Your conversation should give some values to your audience that they can actually implement in their life, and it can help them improve their life at the end. Then only it becomes valuable for them and they are going to watch it. Last but not the least, do not focus on going viral. I have worked on some podcasts and most of the time people are always like, just one podcast need to go viral and my life will change. Yes, my life can change into bad terms as well. If one of your video gets very viral, there will lots of viewers who just came randomly, subscribe to your channel, watch your channel, and they are not coming back again. So what happens when you post your second podcast, second video, they're not going to watch it. Then YouTube feels like you did some spamming sort of thing. So do not focus on going viral. Instead, focus on reaching the right audience so that you can convert it into leads, or you can make them your loyal fans and generate revenue out of it. If you have made this far, it means you are very dedicated to grow your podcast on YouTube and want to build a good personal brand. But if you don't have a big team, you cannot do all these things seamlessly, and hiring a big team can be very expensive. So if you do not have a team already, there is a Google form in the description you can fill, and I will help you build a seamless workflow for your YouTube channel that will run your podcast on auto mode. Well, thank you for watching. We'll meet in the next video. Bye bye.